I stared at my reflection in the restaurant's bathroom mirror, adjusting my simple black blazer. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses filtered through the door, my family celebrating my sister Emma's promotion to senior manager. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Sarah, hurry up." Mom's sharp voice carried across the restaurant. "Emma's about to order champagne." Taking a deep breath, I returned to our table at La Maison, one of the city's most exclusive French restaurants. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over white tablecloths and gleaming silverware. My family was already studying the wine list, deliberately ignoring my return. "I think we should get the Cristal," Emma announced, pointing to the most expensive champagne on the menu. "It's a special occasion after all." Dad nodded approvingly. "Of course, princess. You deserve it. Making senior manager at 28, that's incredible." I sat quietly sipping my water. No one had even asked about my job in months. They'd stopped caring when I told them I was just a secretary at Morton Industries. What they didn't know was that I'd worked my way up from executive assistant to chief operating officer in 3 years. Now at 26, I was about to become the youngest CEO in the company's history. But they didn't need to know that. "Not yet. Sarah," Mom's voice dripped with false concern. "Are you sure you can afford this place? We understand if you need to leave early. Administrative work doesn't pay much, does it?" Emma snickered behind her menu. Maybe she should have focused more on her career like me instead of just answering phones. I forced a polite smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Please don't worry about me." "Well," she sighed dramatically, "I just hate seeing you waste your potential. A secretary will always be poor, dear. That's just how it is." The waiter approached with practice timing. "Are we ready to order?" Emma barely glanced at him as she rattled off the most expensive items on the menu. "We'll start with the caviar service, then the lobster thermidor and the wagyu beef. Oh, and the Cristal champagne." My father beamed with pride while my mother patted Emma's hand. "That's my successful girl," she cooed. "Unlike some people, you know how to live properly." I sat there letting their words wash over me like waves. They had no idea that tomorrow morning Morton Industries would announce its new CEO. They had no idea that their poor secretary daughter had been quietly building an empire while they were busy praising Emma's every move. The evening dragged on, a parade of expensive dishes and backhanded comments. Emma dominated the conversation, detailing her incredible achievements, while Mom and Dad hung on every word. I picked at my food waiting. Finally, the moment I'd been anticipating arrived. The waiter presented the bill with a flourish. $2,847, ladies and gentlemen. Dad reached for his wallet, but Emma stopped him. "Let's split it," she suggested, looking at me with mock concern. "Though, Sarah, if you can't afford your share, we understand. Maybe you can wash dishes to cover it." They laughed, the sound echoing off the restaurant's elegant walls. I reached into my purse and pulled out a sleek black card, the one marked Employee Expenses. "Let me," I said quietly, handing it to the waiter. A minute later he returned, looking apologetic. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this card seems to be declined." My family's reaction was immediate. Mom's face lit up with vindictive satisfaction, while Emma barely contained her glee. "Oh, Sarah," Mom sighed, shaking her head. "This is so embarrassing. This is exactly what I meant about secretaries and their limitations." I fought back a smile as I reached into my purse again. "You're right, Mom. I'm so sorry. I accidentally gave him my employee expenses card. Silly me." Then I pulled out another card, solid metal, with my name engraved in bold letters. Sarah Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer. The waiter's eyes widened as he recognized the card. "Oh, Miss Mitchell, I apologize. I didn't realize. Would you like me to bring the private dining room menu?" The table fell silent. Emma's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. "What did he just say?" Mom whispered, her face draining of color. I smiled, finally ready to shatter their illusions. "I think we have some catching up to do." "What's going on?" Emma's voice cracked, her earlier confidence evaporating as she stared at my CO card. "This has to be some kind of joke." The waiter, sensing the tension, quietly processed my payment and disappeared. The private dining room menu lay untouched on the table, my name and title clearly visible on the personalized cover. "Remember 3 years ago?" I began, my voice steady. When I started as a justice secretary at Morton Industries? What you didn't know was that I was specifically hired as executive assistant to James Morton himself. Dad's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. James Morton, the billionaire? I nodded, taking a slow sip of water. The same. He was looking for someone to train, someone who could eventually take over the company. He didn't want another entitled MBA graduate who thought they knew everything. He wanted someone who would learn the business from the ground up. That's impossible, Mom interrupted, her hands shaking slightly. You're lying. You've always been ordinary. Emma is the successful one. Is she? I pulled out my phone and opened my emails. Here's tomorrow's press release. Morton Industries announces new CEO. Sarah Mitchell, 26, becomes youngest chief executive in company history. It goes live at 9 a.m. Emma grabbed my phone, scrolling frantically through the email. Her face grew paler with each line. This can't be real. You're just a secretary. No, Emma. I worked as James's assistant while he taught me everything about running the company. Every department, every process, every decision. While you were posting about your corner office on Instagram, I was learning how to run a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But your clothes, Mom sputtered, gesturing at my simple blazer. Your apartment, your old car. Did you ever wonder why I never moved to a bigger place? Why I kept driving my used Honda? I leaned forward. As I was investing everything. Building my portfolio. Following James's guidance. That tiny apartment building I live in? I own it. All 6 floors. Dad found his voice, though it trembled slightly. How much? My net worth. I smiled. As of tomorrow's announcement, with my shares in Morton Industries and my other investments, just over $300 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's perfectly manicured nails dug into the tablecloth. Mom's lipstick-stained wine glass sat forgotten. Dad looked like he might faint. All those times you mocked me for being just a secretary, I continued, my voice taking on an edge. I was actually closing million-dollar deals. That week you refused to help me move because you were too busy celebrating Emma's bonus? I was in Dubai, negotiating a $50 million contract. Why didn't you tell us? Mom whispered. Would you have believed me? You were too busy planning Emma's office warming parties and bragging about her company car. You never once asked about my work, my goals, my dreams. You just assumed I was a failure. Emma suddenly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. This isn't fair. I worked hard for my position. You just got lucky because some old man chose you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Lucky? I worked 80-hour weeks. I studied every night. Earned this, Emma. The difference is, I didn't need to post about it on social media or brag at family dinners. But tomorrow. Dad started. Tomorrow everything changes, I finished for him. Tomorrow the world finds out that your poor secretary daughter runs one of the largest companies in the country. I stood up, gathering my things. Oh, and Emma? That promotion you're celebrating? Morton Industries just acquired your company this morning. The paperwork was finalized an hour ago. Emma's face went from pale to green. What does that mean? I smiled, putting on my coat. It means that starting tomorrow, you don't just have to explain your quarterly results to your current boss. You'll have to explain them to me. The look of horror on their faces was priceless. As I turned to leave, I paused, remembering one last detail. And Mom? About what you said, a secretary will always be poor? You might want to rethink that. My executive assistant makes more than Emma's entire department combined. With that, I walked away from the table, leaving them sitting in stunned silence. Through the restaurant's windows, I could see my driver pulling up in the Rolls-Royce I'd never shown them. Tomorrow would be interesting, but tonight? Tonight was just perfect. The next morning, I sat in my penthouse office on the 50th floor of Morton Tower, watching the sun rise over the city. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the press release went live at 9 a.m. 57 missed calls from Mom, 38 from Dad, and countless messages from Emma. I opened one of Emma's texts. You can't do this to me. I've worked too hard to report to my little sister. James Morton, now chairman of the board, walked in with his characteristic warm smile. At 65, he'd been more of a father figure to me than my own dad ever was. How did dinner go last night? he asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. Exactly as expected, I replied, showing him the stream of desperate messages. They're in full panic mode. He chuckled. You know, when I first hired you, I saw something in your eyes. That hunger to learn, to prove yourself. Not for glory or status, but for personal satisfaction. That's rare. My intercom buzzed. Ms. Mitchell, your family is in the lobby demanding to see you. Security is asking for instructions. I pressed the button. Send them up, Lisa. And please call the board members for our 10 a.m. meeting. The same board meeting your sister is supposed to present at? James raised an eyebrow. Exactly. I smoothed my designer suit. No more simple blazers. Time to show them who I really am. Minutes later, my family burst into my office. Their appearance was a far cry from last night's polished confidence. Mom's hair was uncombed, Dad looked like he hadn't slept, and Emma was practically vibrating with rage. How dare you, she shrieked. You orchestrated this whole thing. You deliberately humiliated me. Good morning to you too, I said calmly, standing behind my desk. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind me offered a spectacular view of the city. My city now. Sarah, honey, Mom's tone had changed completely from last night. We are so proud of you. We always knew you had potential. Stop. My voice cut through her fake sweetness. Let's be clear. You're not here because you're proud. You're here because you're terrified. Emma's terrified of reporting to her failure, sister. Dad's terrified because his construction company relies heavily on contracts from Morton Industries. And you, Mom? You're terrified because your social status just got turned upside down. Dad stepped forward. Princess, let's talk about this. Family should help family, right? Family. I laughed. Like when you helped me. When you celebrated my achievements. When you showed any interest in my life. My phone buzzed, a reminder for the board meeting. Emma, you have a presentation to the board in 20 minutes. I suggest you go prepare. You can't. She started. I can and I will. I earned this position, Emma. Every step of the way. Now you have a choice. You can either accept that your little sister is your CEO and do your job properly, or you can resign. Your call. She stormed out, mascara running down her cheeks. Dad followed her, already calculating how this would affect his business. Mom lingered, trying one last time. Darling, I'm hosting the charity gala next month. Perhaps you could. No, Mom. No more pretending. No more fake pride. You'll need to earn my respect just like I earned my position. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. After they left, James came back in. Tough love. They needed to understand, I said, gathering my papers for the board meeting. Success isn't about titles or appearances. It's about hard work, integrity, and patience. And now. I smiled, thinking about the long road ahead. Now they'll learn what real success looks like. Not from Instagram posts or fancy titles, but from actual achievement. Walking into the boardroom minutes later, I saw Emma sitting there, her presentation ready. Our eyes met, and for the first time I saw something new in her gaze: respect. Good morning, everyone, I addressed the board. Let's begin. As I took my seat at the head of the table, I couldn't help but smile. The poor secretary had finally written her own success story, and it was better than anything my family could have imagined. Life has a funny way of teaching lessons. Sometimes the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the underestimated ones, they're the ones writing the biggest checks in the end.